They called her useless the day her fiancé threw her engagement ring into the mud. In front of everyone, nobles, servants, and her own father, he said she was a burden born of pity. She had smiled then, trembling, while her heart cracked like thin glass beneath winter's heel. When she died, no one mourned. Not her family, not him, not the kingdom that feasted on her humiliation. But death, it seemed, was only a door, and she walked through it with eyes open. Now she stands again, the same world before her, yet her pulse steady, her mind burning with all the memories of what's to come. This time, she knows every word they'll speak, every lie they'll tell, every blade they'll twist into her back. Evelyn Graymore was born soft to soft for a world that worshipped sharp edges. Her smile was gentle, her voice quiet, her heart too full of trust. Her father called her decorative, her mother called her delicate, and her fiancé, Lord Adrian Vance, called her his little dove. She believed him, believed his words, his warmth, his whispered promises beneath the pear blossoms. He told her he would protect her, that she would never know pain. But promises are fragile things, and love is the easiest mask to break. When her father's wealth crumbled, so did Adrian's affection. He stopped visiting, stopped writing, stopped looking at her the way he once did. Whispers slithered through the corridors of the estate that Adrian had found someone else, someone radiant, ambitious, and cruelly perfect. Her own sister, Marianne Evelyn, refused to believe it. Until the night of the royal ball, she entered, trembling but hopeful, wearing the gown Adrian had once said made her look like moonlight. And there, beneath chandeliers dripping with gold, she saw him, kneeling, holding a ring. Before Marianne, the room gasped. The music died, her world shattered with it. Adrian didn't meet her eyes. Her father turned away, pretending not to see his daughter's ruin. Marianne only smiled, as if betrayal were a form of affection. "Evelyn," Adrian said, voice laced with pity, "you understand, don't you? You were never meant for this world." The laughter that followed carved her open. Her breath caught sharp, shallow, broken, and in that moment, surrounded by eyes that delighted in her fall, she realized no one would save her. She left the ballroom alone. The night was cold. The bridge was slick with frost. They said her carriage slipped by accident. But the truth was simpler. Her heart had already fallen long before the wheels ever did. Evelyn expected nothing after death. No light, no sound, only silence, the kind that feels like forever. But when she opened her eyes, sunlight spilled across her ceiling. The same ceiling she'd stared at as a girl. The lilac curtains, the worn desk, the faint scent of spring. Her hands were smaller, her voice unbroken. And outside her window, the pear tree bloomed the very day her life had first begun to crumble. Time had turned backward. She sat in the quiet, trembling, then laughing, then crying until her throat burned. Was it mercy? Was it madness? It didn't matter. The gods, or fate, or something darker had given her one thing: knowledge. She remembered every lie, every whisper, every knife hidden behind a smile. She remembered the taste of betrayal, and she would never swallow it again. This time, she would not be gentle. This time, she would not beg. She would see them every move, every motive, every mask. When her maid announced that Lord Adrian Vance had arrived for tea, Evelyn only smiled. The same man who would one day break her heart now stood in her garden, blissfully unaware. She descended the stairs with calm grace, her pulse steady. Every detail around her, the weather, the servants, his words matched her memories exactly. It was all happening again, but she was not the same girl. "Lord Vance," she greeted softly, curtsying like before. Her tone was warm, but her eyes were winter. Adrian smiled, charmed, oblivious. He did not know the world had shifted. He did not know the girl before him had already lived his betrayal and died for it. Evelyn returned his smile, serene and knowing. This time, she would not be the lamb. She would be the shepherd, quiet, patient, watching the wolves circle. And when the moment came, She would lead them exactly where she wanted them to go. Evelyn returned to the world that had once devoured her, but this time, she wore her calm like armor. Every word she spoke was measured, every smile deliberate. She had learned the art of silence and how much power it held. The nobles whispered when she reappeared. "The forgotten Greymore girl?" they said. "She looks different." She was. Gone was the timid debutante who'd flinched at laughter. In her place stood a woman who carried tragedy in her bones and wisdom in her eyes. She didn't rush to confront anyone. Revenge, she knew now, wasn't a blade, it was a chessboard. And she had all the future's moves memorized. First, she salvaged her father's estate before his ruin began. She invested in the trade routes that she knew would soon flourish. Gold flowed quietly back into Greymore hands, and for the first time, her father looked at her with awe instead of disappointment. Then came the court. The same glittering halls that had watched her humiliation now echoed with her name spoken with curiosity, even respect. Adrian noticed. Of course he did. He sought her out at a spring banquet, all charm and polished regret. "Evelyn," he murmured, "I hardly recognized you." She smiled, sipping her wine. "Most people don't, until it's too late." Her tone was gentle to gentle, and it unsettled him. She began weaving her web, thread by thread, a suggestion here, a business tip there. Each word, each kindness, a stone placed carefully on the path that would lead him to ruin. Her sister Marianne watched from afar, jealousy glinting like glass. She couldn't understand how Evelyn's quiet presence drew more attention than her laughter ever had. Evelyn only curtsied and smiled. After all, storms don't announce themselves. They gather silently until the sky breaks. And when it did, she would be ready to stand beneath it untouched, untrembling, while they drowned in the flood they once called her weakness. It began softly, no thunder, no blood, only whispers, the same way they'd once destroyed her. Evelyn had learned, destruction doesn't always roar. Sometimes it smiles. Adrian's empire was built on pride, deals made through charm, promises sealed with deceit. She nudged each one, just enough. A misplaced letter, a rumor that reached the right ear, a trade route delayed by a friendly suggestion. Piece by piece, his fortune unraveled. By the time he realized, the noose was already woven from the very words he'd once used to shame her. When the scandal broke, Evelyn hosted a ball, a perfect replica of the one where he'd chosen her sister over her. Same chandeliers, same music. Only this time, she stood at the center, radiant and still. Adrian entered the hall, pale, desperate, humiliated. He sought her out through the crowd, eyes pleading. "Evelyn," he rasped, "you knew. You could have warned me." She turned, meeting his gaze without anger, only quiet certainty. "Would you have listened?" He flinched, because he remembered that night, her tears, her silence, and he knew the answer was no. Her sister, Marianne, arrived soon after. Tears streaked her painted face, her jewels already pawned. "Evelyn, please," she whispered. "You can't mean to ruin us." Evelyn's heart wavered just for a breath. They had been sisters once, hadn't they? But memories are cruel things. They reminded her of the laughter, the cold, the bridge. "I didn't ruin you," she said softly. "You did that yourselves." And with that, she turned away, not in triumph, but in peace. Adrian fell to his knees, as she once had before him. But she did not gloat. She simply offered her hand, steady and calm. "I don't seek vengeance," she said, "only balance." And when he looked up, all he saw was what he'd destroyed and what he could never reach again. The world moved on, as it always does after storms, but Evelyn did not return to the ashes she left behind. She built something new atop them. The Greymore estate flourished once more, though not from inheritance or marriage, but through her own hands. She opened schools for young women, taught them to read contracts and dreams alike. She funded shelters for those abandoned by the same kind of cruelty that had once broken her. She became what no one had believed she could be: indispensable. And yet, power no longer thrilled her. It simply was, a quiet, steady thing, like the heartbeat she'd once lost and reclaimed. Adrian disappeared from society soon after. Marianne married poorly and faded into rumor. Evelyn felt neither joy nor sorrow for them, only release. Peace wasn't the absence of pain, it was understanding it, forgiving it, and walking past it without looking back. In that stillness, love found her again, not through grand gestures or desperate vows, but in the eyes of a man who saw her not as something fragile, but as someone whole. He didn't try to save her. He didn't need to. He simply stayed steady, unshaken while she rebuilt the future she'd once been denied. Sometimes they'd walk together beneath the pear blossoms, petals drifting like snow. He'd take her hand and say nothing, and in that silence, she found everything she'd ever wanted. Not vengeance, not validation, just life simple, bright, unbroken. And when the seasons turned again, she finally felt the weight lift from her chest. She had been the girl who died unloved, the woman who rose unyielding, and now the soul who finally rested, not in weakness, but in grace. They called her useless once, a fragile girl meant only to decorate someone else's dream. But she had been the silence before the thunder, the breath before the flame. They buried her name beneath mockery, yet she rose not to shout, but to shine. Her scars became her scripture, her memory, her weapon, her forgiveness, her freedom, and when history whispered her story, it no longer began with betrayal, but with rebirth. For Evelyn Graymore did not return to haunt them, she returned to heal herself. They buried her in silence, but she bloomed louder than ever.